Alright, family, pull up close, because 50 Cent just got dragged into the middle of a storm he thought he buried 20 years ago, and the man holding the shovel is nobody's rookie, it's Spider Loc, the West Coast soldier 50 Cent himself signed, hyped, promoted, and then, according to Spider Loc, ghosted like a stranger in the street. Now if you thought the old G-Unit drama was dead and gone, tucked away in the archives with the throwback mixtapes, you got another thing coming, because Spider Loc just walked in front of a camera and unloaded a version of the story that has the internet moving sideways. And listen, this ain't some random hater on a live stream throwing bricks at 50 Cent for clicks. This is a man who wore the chain, rode in the van, appeared on Tony Yayo's album, sat in the studio with Fifth, and shared bread with the crew. So when Spider Loc opens his mouth about how it really ended, people listen. And baby, what he said this week is the reason 50 Cent's name is trending in a way even Fifth can't spin. Real ones already know the backstory, but for the newer crowd who came up on Power and the Bezel liquor commercials, let me lay it out clean. It's 2004, and Spider Loc is grinding on the West Coast, trying to punch his ticket into the bigger conversation. He crosses paths with Young Buck, and Young Buck, being that connector he was in his prime, introduces Spider Loc to 50 Cent on the set of the Shorty Wanna Ride video. That handshake changed Spider Loc's whole life. 4 months later, Spider Loc is signed to G-Unit Records, standing under the biggest hip-hop umbrella in America at the time. He appears on Tony Yayo's Thoughts of a Predicate Felon. He's got 50 Cent stamping him. He's got the machine turning behind him. On paper, this was the come-up story every West Coast rapper prayed for. But the paper, family, is where the fairy tale ended, because behind the scenes, according to Spider Loc, something started shifting, and 50 Cent, the man who put him on, was the same man who stopped picking up. And this is the part that flips the whole story, because Spider Loc didn't just say he got dropped, a lot of artists get dropped, that's the industry, everybody knows the deal. What Spider Loc said cuts deeper than that. Spider Loc said 50 Cent went silent on him. No conversation. No sit down. No explanation. The relationship, the trust, the communication, all of it, in Spider Loc's own words, just ceased. Ceased. That's the word he used. Like a heartbeat stopping in the middle of the night. He said if he had to list every event, every phone call, every project moment leading up to that silence, everything pointed toward a healthy situation between him and 50 Cent. Nothing warned him. Nothing hinted. He didn't see the blind side coming, and when it came without a courtesy call. Now, if you asking me straight up, that's the kind of ending that leaves scar tissue, because it isn't just business, it's personal. And Spider Loc made it clear he took it personal. Grab a seat because we peeling this one back layer by layer. Spider Loc also said 50 Cent never really rode for his musical evolution. He said 50 Cent was never behind his mixtapes. He said 50 Cent did nothing to push his single Beautiful World. And when you hear a former G-Unit soldier say that his own boss didn't lift a finger for his solo push, that's a heavy accusation. Because G-Unit at that time was a promotional monster. 50 Cent could turn an unknown into a household name with one shout-out on Hot 97. So if 50 Cent had the tools and chose not to use them, then it wasn't neglect by accident. Spider Loc is basically saying it was neglect by design. And that framing changes the whole narrative around Spider Loc's short run at G-Unit, because for years the assumption was that Spider Loc just didn't pop. But if you believe Spider Loc's version, the truth is Spider Loc never got a real shot to pop. And then there's the part that made hip-hop Twitter light up like a fireworks show. 50 Cent has recently said, on his own platform, in front of his own camera, that he wants to erase the memory of G-Unit altogether. Erase it. That's the word. And Spider Loc heard that. Every former G-Unit soldier heard that. And imagine being Spider Loc, or Buck, or Banks, or Yayo, men who gave 50 Cent years of their lives, years of their loyalty, years of their public image, and then watching the man himself say he wants the whole chapter deleted from history. That's not just a slight, family, that's a full-on receipt burn. And Spider Loc, being the direct type of dude he is, responded head-on. He said 50 Cent did him hold dirt on a level that would take forever to fully explain, and he laid it out with the kind of calm that only comes from a man who has been sitting on that story for a long time. Now let's get into who Spider Loc really is, because a lot of casual fans just remember the beefs, the game diss records, the courtroom-adjacent moments, and they file him away as a soldier and nothing more. But Spider Loc is a fully formed West Coast artist with a real catalog, real bars, and a real story. He came into 50 Cent's orbit as a certified street voice from Los Angeles, and 50 Cent knew exactly what he was signing. Fifth wasn't buying a mystery. Fifth was buying an authenticated West Coast asset who could plant a G-Unit flag in California and hold the line against Game after that whole situation went south. And for a moment, it worked. Spider Loc was on the front lines, defending the crew on wax, holding up the banner in the streets, doing everything a real G-Unit soldier was supposed to do. And then, silence. That's the pattern Spider Loc keeps returning to. The silence. And here's the twist nobody saw coming, because when you rewind the tape, Spider Loc isn't the only former G-Unit affiliate who has said something similar. Young Buck has talked about how the Czech stopped feeling like a family and started feeling like a business. Game turned on 50 Cent so hard the two of them have been circling each other for 2 decades. Even Tony Yayo, the closest of the close, has had public moments where the tension boiled over before being smoothed back down. So when Spider Loc says 50 Cent ended their relationship without a word, he's not throwing a lonely stone, he's adding another brick to a wall that a lot of former soldiers have been quietly stacking. And that wall is starting to look like a monument. A monument that reads, "The loyalty inside G-Unit only ran in one direction." Now real talk, there's always 2 sides. And that's not me softening the punch, that's just the truth. It is entirely possible that Spider Loc's version of events is missing the pieces only 50 Cent knows. It is entirely possible that Spider Loc, like a lot of dropped artists, is carrying resentment that has aged into a version of the story that leans a little heavier in his favor. Because we can't pretend that's not a thing in this industry. Artists who get cut loose don't always tell the full story, sometimes they tell the story that heals them. And 50 Cent, whatever else you want to say about the man, doesn't run around cutting people off for no reason. Fifth has always been strategic. Fifth has always played chess. So if 50 Cent pulled the plug, there's usually a chess move behind it. The question is whether that chess move justified the silence, and Spider Loc is basically saying, nothing justified the silence. Nothing. And the twist nobody saw coming keeps peeling. Spider Loc said the connection, the situation, the understanding, whatever you want to call the professional bond between him and 50 Cent, didn't just fade. It stopped. Cold. And that word choice matters, because Spider Loc could have said the label lost interest, or the promo dried up, or the machine moved on. He didn't. He said the human relationship ended, and it ended without a conversation. That framing shifts the entire accusation from a business grievance to a character grievance, and 50 Cent, for all his internet clout and stars money and executive producer credits, really can't afford another character grievance right now, because the timing is loud. And here's the part that has the streets buzzing louder than a Queen's block party in August. 50 Cent has been on a tear this year. Fifth has been executive producing shows, taking meetings, running his liquor company, dropping documentaries, and firing shots at every rapper who breathes wrong in his direction. But while Fifth has been building his empire on camera, the former G-Unit soldiers he built the whole thing on top of have been quietly rewriting the origin story. And that's dangerous for 50 Cent. Because the man's whole brand is built on being the last man standing. If the soldiers he stood on start telling the audience how he actually treated them, that last man standing narrative starts to look a little different. It starts to look like a man standing alone because he pushed everyone else off the platform. Now if you asking me straight up, this whole Spider Loc versus 50 Cent situation is the tip of an iceberg the culture has been ignoring. Because G-Unit wasn't just a rap group. G-Unit was a lifestyle. G-Unit was a movement. G-Unit was the reason a whole generation wore G-Unit sneakers, drank vitamin water because Fifth said so, and treated Banks, Buck, Yayo, and Game like household names. And when 50 Cent talks about wanting to erase that chapter, he isn't just erasing his own memory, he's rewriting the cultural memory of everyone who lived through that era. And a lot of people, Spider Loc included, aren't willing to let that pen slide. And baby, this is where it gets loud, because Spider Loc didn't just do a courtesy interview. He sat down and detailed the emotional weight of what happened. He described what it felt like to have a working relationship with a man he considered a real one, only for that relationship to evaporate without a phone call, without a text, without a face-to-face. He described what it felt like to keep making music, keep believing in the roster, keep repping G-Unit, while the boss quietly stopped rocking with him behind the curtain. That kind of professional ghosting, especially at that level of hip-hop, doesn't just end a career, it shakes a man's understanding of loyalty. And Spider Loc is basically telling the world, right now in 2026, that his understanding of loyalty was permanently rewired by 50 Cent. Now let's talk about 50 Cent's response pattern, because Fifth has one, and it's predictable. When someone from his past speaks out, 50 Cent either A, ignores it and lets the story die, B, roasts them on Instagram with a caption that becomes a meme, or C, weaponizes his platform to bury the narrative under a wave of counter-programming. Spider Loc's statements have been circulating long enough now that 50 Cent has had every opportunity to hit option A, B, or C. And so far, the response has been quiet. Which is interesting. Because when 50 Cent goes quiet, it usually means one of two things: either the story is beneath him, or the story is too close to something he doesn't want to reopen. And in this case, Spider Loc's words don't feel like something beneath him. They feel like something Fifth has to think about carefully before answering. And the streets are watching. Because this isn't just a hip-hop moment. This is a legacy moment. This is the kind of story that ends up in documentaries 10 years from now. This is the kind of moment where the culture decides whether 50 Cent gets to keep the sole authorship of the G-Unit story, or whether the soldiers finally get to speak into the record for themselves. Spider Loc, whether people agree with him or not, just made himself a co-author. He grabbed the pen. And every time a former G-Unit member grabs the pen, the mythology of 50 Cent's empire gets rewritten a little more. Now if you asking me straight up, the saddest part of this whole thing isn't even the falling out. Falling outs happen in every crew. Bands break up. Labels split. Groups implode. The saddest part is the silence. Because a real one, in Spider Loc's mind, doesn't need to give a long goodbye, but a real one gives a goodbye. A conversation. Yo, we going in another direction. Something. Anything. And 50 Cent, according to Spider Loc, gave him nothing. And nothing hurts different from a bad ending. Nothing is the ending that never gets closure. Nothing is the ending that keeps replaying in a man's head for years. And that's the part Spider Loc still hasn't shaken. Now let me pop into the bigger picture for a second, because this is bigger than Spider Loc and 50 Cent. This is about how the culture treats loyalty in general. Because we live in an era where rappers post brotherhood on Instagram Monday and delete each other by Friday. Where crews swear on live streams and stab in group chats. And when a soldier like Spider Loc, who came up in the era where G-Unit was supposed to represent unbreakable unity, comes forward and says even that flagship crew wasn't as tight as the marketing sold it, that's a cultural gut punch. That tells the fans watching in 2026 that even the loudest displays of brotherhood in hip-hop should be watched carefully. That the chains don't guarantee the bond. That the group photos don't guarantee the phone call when the paperwork ends. And here's where the story sharpens, because Spider Loc isn't out here trying to end 50 Cent. He isn't calling for cancellations. He isn't running to podcasts asking for pity. He is simply, and this is important, telling his version. Calmly. Directly. With detail. And a story told calmly, with detail, is way more dangerous in the court of public opinion than a story told with anger. Because calm sounds like truth. And Spider Loc is delivering his account with the kind of composure that makes even 50 Cent's loyalists pause and go, that's actually a fair point. That's the level Spider Loc is operating at. He isn't screaming. He's stating. And stating always beats screaming when you want the public to believe you. Now what happens next depends entirely on 50 Cent. Because 50 has options. 50 Cent can go on Instagram and shred Spider Loc with a photoshopped meme, and half the internet will laugh, and Spider Loc will be a hashtag for a week. Or 50 Cent can do something no one expects, sit down, respond seriously, address the accusations point by point, and maybe even acknowledge that the way G-Unit ended for certain soldiers wasn't as clean as the mythology says. That second path is the mature move. That second path is the legacy move. But 50 Cent, as we've learned across 2 decades, doesn't always take the legacy move. 50 takes the winning move. And 50 has to decide which of those 2 moves actually wins right now. Because make no mistake, 50 Cent is not losing his empire over a Spider Loc interview. 50 is way too big, way too diversified, way too plugged into television and film to be shaken by one former artist's testimony. But 50 Cent's mythology, the story he sells about being the ultimate hustler who built everything the right way, that mythology can absolutely be chipped. And every time another former G-Unit voice steps up to add a chapter, another chip comes off. And chips add up. Chips become cracks. Cracks become fractures. And Spider Loc, whether by design or by accident, just put a new chip in a very old statue. Now let me leave you with the piece that really has me thinking. Spider Loc said, in essence, that he was totally blindsided. 3 times. Totally. That repetition wasn't random. That was a man making sure his emotional truth landed. That was a man saying, I want the audience to feel exactly how far outside my radar this move came from. And when a grown man in this industry repeats a word 3 times in a row, that's the kind of detail that separates real testimony from a rehearsed talking point. Spider Loc wasn't performing. Spider Loc was releasing something he'd carried for years. And 50 Cent, sitting on top of his empire, has to decide whether that release earns a response, or whether the silence continues. So where does this all land? It lands in the same place every great hip-hop story eventually lands, in the hands of the fans. Because you, the audience, decide whose version wins. You decide whether 50 Cent's legacy stays polished, or whether the receipts from Spider Loc, Buck, Game, and every other former G-Unit soldier finally stack high enough to reshape the record. You decide whether 50 gets to erase that memory, or whether the culture insists on preserving it, all of it, including the parts 50 would rather bury. And that decision, family, is being made right now in comment sections, group chats, and reaction videos across the internet. History is being written in real time, and Spider Loc just made himself impossible to leave out. So drop your take below. Do you believe Spider Loc's account of how 50 Cent handled the fallout? Do you think 50 Cent should sit down and address the G-Unit soldiers who feel forgotten? Or do you think Spider Loc is a dropped artist finally airing out a wound that healed wrong? Tell me straight, because the comments section on this one is going to be a movie all by itself, and I'm reading every single response. Follow up with your favorite G-Unit era memory too, because if 50 Cent really wants to erase this chapter, the least we can do is keep it alive right here with our own receipts. And if you're new around here, hit the follow so you don't miss the next chapter, because trust, this Spider Loc vs 50 Cent story is not over. It is nowhere near over. That's the whole story straight, no chaser, catch you on the next one.